Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell here in his office. Thank you very much. Senator, will this pass tonight?
Absolutely. There are a couple of little glitches that Peter correctly identified in his setup piece that will require it to go back to the House, but they're very minor adjustments.
But just to get into the process, and special report viewers, as you know, sometimes get into the weeds.
That's okay.
And this is called the Byrd Rule, enables you to have reconciliation, to pass it with 51 votes. Right. And essentially there were a couple of provisions that didn't fit according to the parliamentarian. So now you have to vote on this bill, and it's different than the one the House passed, and then send it back.
Yeah, but only slightly. And this has happened before in the reconciliation process. It's very complicated and probably boring to your viewers, but we will ultimately fit the parameters. The bill is basically going to pass and go to the president as is. This is significant middle-class tax relief, contrary to all the Democratic talking points. And equally important, we're going to give American business a chance to compete globally again. We've basically been priced out of the global market, which leads to offshoring of American jobs. The theme behind this bill is to get middle-class tax relief for most people in the middle class, demonstrably the case, as somebody in the setup piece was saying. They'll recognize that when their take-home pay changes next year, and then couple that with making American business more competitive. You know, we've had 8 years in a row of stagnant growth. The country's significantly underperforming. We think a combination of the regulatory changes that the president's already made, plus this tax reform, give us a chance to get growing again. And the early indications, there's enthusiasm about this. We've had two quarters in a row, 3% growth. I don't want to read too much into that, but that's the right direction. Consumer confidence is way up. The stock market is at 5,000. I think there's a lot of feeling out in the country that we just haven't been performing up to our potential. This gives us a chance to do that.
All right, you're not going to be surprised that Democrats jumped on this technical snafu very quickly. Steny Hoyer, who we'll talk to later, released a statement saying, in their headlong rush to jam their partisan, unpopular tax legislation through Congress, Republicans wrote a bill that hadn't even been read carefully enough to ensure it complied with Senate procedural rules. Whatever happened to Republicans' insistence on reading bills before voting on them, we will be dealing with the repercussions of poorly written language and hidden loopholes for years to come.
Apparently Obamacare had the same kind of glitch when they used the reconciliation process. I don't think that Steny Hoyer brought that up today.
Are you worried about where this goes if the growth does not materialize immediately?
Well, you can worry about a lot of things, but what we do know for sure is that the country has not been growing as it should. That's not an argument for the status quo. And I think every Democrat who votes against this, and apparently that's all of them in the House and Senate, are saying, in effect, we're satisfied with where we are. We can live with slow growth. They don't want to get America performing again. Look, as recently as a couple of years ago, a lot of Democrats were saying we ought to get the corporate tax rate down. What's changed? Donald Trump is president, so they changed their position. They're simply not interested in doing the kinds of things that economists believe will get the country growing again. We just see the country differently. We're going to have a big argument in the fall about whether this is the right thing to do for the country. We're looking forward to making that argument.
You know, Senator Manchin paints it differently, and he suggested this weekend that it's really you who didn't want them engaged in this tax bill. Take a listen real quick.
I gave them a whole litany of things that I thought 10 or more Democrats would vote for. To have it 60 or 65 votes, I really believe is possible if you had regular order. Once Mitch McConnell was decided that 51 votes was all he was needed, and they were all going to be Republicans and make it political, that's exactly what happened.
Was he right?
Well, no, we did follow regular order. Reconciliation is regular order. They used it for Obamacare. Look, all but 3 Democratic senators sent me a letter before August outlining the kind of tax reform that they would support. It had nothing to do with getting the country growing again. So they had every opportunity to participate. They could participate in hearings, in committee, votes on the floor. We had votes when it cleared the floor the first time. They had plenty of opportunity to participate.
You're going to get any Democrats tonight? Any Democratic votes tonight?
I wouldn't think so. No, I think they think that they want to have a big debate about this year, and we're happy to have it.
All right. The government shutdown. You could have a victory in the Senate and possibly the House tomorrow morning, and then face the prospect of the government shutting down by the end of the week.
Not going to happen. Neither side wants to do that, and when neither side wants to have a government shutdown, it doesn't happen.
Well, what are you giving on? If that's...
We'll work it out. We always do.
Is DACA on the table?
Senator Schumer and I have already discussed this. No, we'll not be doing DACA this week. That's a matter to be discussed next year. The president's given us till March to address that issue. We have plenty of time to do that.
So, in other words, another short-term continuing resolution that punts to sometime in January.
Or put another way, no government shutdown, which was your original question.
That's true. Let me talk to something that you tout, which is federal judges. Overlooked often has been the moving of the number of judges. The president now has 12 that have gone through here. In comparison, if you look at the stats, that's a big number in previous presidents. How important is that to you, and what has that process been like?
Hugely important. The circuit court system was set up in 1891. We've done 12 circuit judges this year that the president sent up to us. That's a record for the first year of any president since 1891. These are long-standing changes in the federal judiciary that I think will improve it dramatically, and this is on the heels of the Neil Gorsuch confirmation. So one of the sort of underreported, and I'm glad you brought it up, one of the really unreported successes of this administration and this Republican Senate, because we are in the personnel business, unlike our friends in the House, is the changes we're bringing about in the federal courts. These are young, conservative in the sense that they believe the job of the judge is to try to interpret the law as it's written, not to try to make things up. Those are the kinds of people the president's installing. We're going to continue to do that as long as the American people give us a majority here in the Senate.
I mean, obviously some nominees didn't meet the standard and were pulled off.
Well, that always happens. There were a few district judges. I thought you and I were talking about circuit judges.
Yeah.
There were a few district judges that have pulled out. That's happened under every administration I can remember.
One last thing about pay as you go. The law says that if the Democrats don't waive this, that you were going to have significant cuts. If the president signs it in 2017, some $25 billion comes out of Medicare next year.
Yeah, that's not going to happen.
It's not going to happen.
On a bipartisan basis, we've never allowed that to happen, even though it's possible.
You don't think Democrats will use that as
I don't
leverage?
think either Republicans or Democrats will want to do that.
Do you think the president will sign it this year?
This tax bill? Absolutely.
And you have no doubts it's going to sail through?
It's going to pass, and he'll sign it in all likelihood this week.
Senator, we appreciate your time.
Thank you, Brad.
Thanks for having us.